So hello and welcome to our latest episode of the Kith Kin Podcast, Stories from the Hospitality Industry. I'm really happy to be welcoming Jono here today to tell us all about the ups and downs that have brought him to where he is and what makes the hospitality industry so special. So hi, thank you for coming and joining me in this conversation. And I do have to just say we know each other. Or at least we did know each other it feels like a long time ago. I'm aging both of us here. But so I'm actually, and what people probably don't know when they listen to the podcast is really often when I talk to people, I don't know them, so that I'm having the first ever conversation with them. But with you, we did know each other once a long time ago, but then our paths went in different directions, and I don't think I have spoken to you probably for 15 years, maybe even a bit longer.
Probably.
And so, and so I'm really excited to hear where you went next and what happened. So, can you just tell us who you are and what you do?
Perfect. Cheers, Cassie. Yeah, so I'm Jono Mayes. So originally from Leicester. I now work for Campari Group in the UK. So my job title's pretty long. It's National Bartender, Advocacy and Engagement Manager. And I guess essentially what that means is we have a training academy. So the primary role of that is to educate bartenders, inspire them with things that are happening in the industry, working with people at the leading edge of the industry, either amazing bars or restaurants or people who are kind of on the side of the industry who are experts in things like fermentation or distillation, or historians who look at spirits categories and their relevance in the world, in just the world in general, really. So I manage a team of different brand ambassadors. They look after different parts of our portfolio. So for context, Campari, we're the sixth largest drinks company in the world. We have all of our Italian brands. So Campari, I'm sure most people are familiar with Aperol spritz, obviously. All of the lovely Amari and the kind of the bitter creations coming from Italy, but then also Jamaica rum. So Appleton Estate, Rey Nephew, Agave and Montelobos Mezcal, Espolon Tequila, Courvoisier Cognac, Wild Turkey Bourbon, Bulldog Gin, the list goes on and on. It's a really diverse portfolio, but it gives us the opportunity to do lots of different things at different levels of education. So that's what I do now. So I've been with Campari for 4 years, almost exactly. So joined during kind of lockdown 1, lockdown 2, whichever one it was. And that, I guess, proposed a bit of a challenge when you're kind of tasked with building an advocacy team platform strategy when everything's shut.
Yeah.
So we did some interesting stuff around then. It kind of was more of a learning entry into the business. And then now it feels like we're kind of up and running, and we've got a physical training academy here. We've got a digital training academy website that's got loads of content from short training videos on key serves all the way to long form podcasts, which goes really deep into spirit categories and history. So yeah, Amazing. That's what I do now.
It sounds so exciting, but let's start from the beginning. Tell us your story. How did you get there?
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of weird. I think everyone's kind of journey through hospitality takes a few little twists and turns. So I, like most people, worked in pubs from sort of in between Melton, Oakham, Syston, Penyborough, that kind of way. So in the countryside, worked in country pubs from day dot, really, and then studied in Leicester, started working in a cocktail bar as a barback, and then a few weeks into that, on a Friday night, said to the GM, I'm not here to do this. I'm here to learn how to make drinks and get good at something. And credit to him, like, he just kicked me on the bar with like very little in the way of experience. And it was just, I think that's kind of was a catalyst. I think there was something I loved about that, like the energy of it, working with a team, all the kind of things that I think people find in hospitality when they have a really positive first introduction to it. Just loved it. I then kind of moved up through that, started to manage a couple of places in early 20s, and then dropped out the industry to just do something different. So kind of, I think I made a choice of like, I want to either own my own venue or I want to be a brand ambassador. And to do that, I wanted to build up a bit of sales acumen, probably develop a bit of a more savvy kind of understanding of business. I thought about the other thing that I love, which was cars, and then things I think I had like a knowledge about. So joined a management fast track scheme for a huge like car business that had dealerships and finance arms to it and everything. So did that for a couple of years. And in 2008, with a couple of business partners, we opened a nightclub. So we took on a venue in Leicester with the guy who was there existingly. And for like history buffs, September 2008 was probably not a great time to do something like that.
No.
Global financial crisis kicked in. First 6 months was a real struggle. The three of us just like put all the money we'd saved up. We're all like mid-20s at this point. I had the bar background. Tom and Bryn were way like their speciality was like running business, DJing, music. And so the three of us together, we ran that for just shy of 4 years. Another venue came along, and then we walked away from that. It's 2011, 2012. And then from there, I did quite a bit of consultancy. So got involved with WSET, doing wine education. I worked with a load of venues up and down the country, doing everything from kind of helping venues open to developing drinks concepts to training programs. Traveled a little bit. So I spent a bit of time in East Africa, which was a real eye-opener. I think that was kind of helped me to where I am now, to see something entirely otherworldly to how people are coming into hospitality training, the touch points, what's the word I'm looking for? The way people learn and the touch points people have to help that happen was totally different, but super exciting. You're working with people who are just like so happy to be working in a bar and just absorbing as much information as possible, and being presented with like different ingredients and different seasonality to different things was amazing. And then I guess from there, did that for a number of years. Then I joined Brewdog around 2014 in a sales role that kind of grew. And then not long into that, I saw they were building a still, so doing spirits. So I put my hand up and I was like, this sounds amazing. So then worked on the Brewdog Spirit side to launch Lone Wolf Spirits. And again, that was a kind of a hybrid commercial role, advocacy role. And then, 2020 joined Campari to do this, which is, so that's the kind of the route, as conventional as I guess it could get in this scenario.
Yeah, but still, I mean, there's so much in there and so much learning, isn't there? But where's the, I mean, because I know you're really passionate about what you do and about the industry, but where is that coming from? What made you fall in love with the industry? Was it those first experiences?
It's a few things, I think. So my dad was in the drinks industry when I was growing up. He was a senior director for a company that was basically in the malt supplying industry. So therefore, traveling all around the world to work with like Asahi and Kirin in Japan, or going to America to work with the craft beer scene in America. And just coming back, and I was like, I was early teens at that point. He's coming back from the States, super excited about what craft breweries are doing. And I think you kind of, well, not so much like it was like a glamorous lifestyle, but I think you kind of see how this amazing thing kind of took shape in different parts of the world. Then when I started to work in pubs and bars, I think personally, I think there was working behind a bar, working behind a busy cocktail bar. It's a point in my life where I probably gained a lot of confidence. And I think there were those two things were very much interlinked. And then I think as you kind of go through, and certainly where I am now, we train bartenders of all different levels. And I think there's something now I think the thing I feel most passionate about is like the UK has not always been great at articulating a hospitality career when you're coming through education. And obviously there's limitations in terms of what you can say to people who aren't 18 yet as they're going through education.
About alcohol,
about going to exactly. But I think we train so many bartenders from like incredible bars in London and other key cities. And a huge proportion of those people coming from different places around Europe. And they have a very fundamental different attitude towards hospitality. And we're starting to see that shift a bit in the UK. And it's just things that we can do. So we work with different charities and we work with different kind of other educational platforms to kind of help that happen. And selfishly, I'm kind of trying to shape the content that we do to appeal to me 20 years ago. Because there wasn't that much about. I think first working in a cocktail bar, your availability of information and inspiration was like Difford's Guide for loads and loads of cocktail recipes. And then some grainy quality YouTube videos of people doing flair bartending competitions. And there was just something like, it was just that amazing new bit of something that somebody has found. So I guess that's...
and I think back then also, obviously you had the school for wine. So Wessex was there, but actually there wasn't much, was it, for spirits? And I mean, I remember when I opened my first place, which was probably about the same time that you were working in those bars. And it was, we opened with the view that we weren't going to be selling just, sort of like the bog standard spirits. We were going to go, up a level. And so people would come in and say, can I have a Malibu and Coke? And then we would go, no, but we've got this. This is so much better. And people are going, and then they go, oh yeah, it is. But and actually, I remember back then that people used to say that you couldn't break into that market with a new spirit because it was just so, the big companies had totally sort of swamped it. But actually, these days, that's not true at all, is it? And Campari is a great example. Where you work now is a great example of that. Where actually that there is much more understanding, much more knowledge of spirits, and that's been shared so much more widely that actually you've got consumers that are, very discerning about what they're drinking. And that's a massive change, isn't it, over the last few decades?
You're right. I think there's a lot of things that have happened to help contribute to that. And I think the UK has got to a point where I think being knowledgeable and being discerning about what you're drinking is a positive, as opposed to kind of probably when I first started working, the kind of someone to come to the bar and ask what the selection of gins or tequilas or beers was kind of like, okay. But now it's kind of, you see it proliferating in your Saturday morning TVs. There's a cocktail section, there's a rum section, there's people talking about spirits in a much more mainstream light. And then you've got what happened with craft beer and what happened with gin. So people seeking out the new thing. And there's little bits of information, there's little like taglines or something unique about a product that when a consumer comes into the bar, they can try something new. If there's something easy for them to relay to their friends, it helps that message to spread. So it could be something of like, oh, you tried an espresso martini using cognac instead of gin, or instead of vodka, sorry. It becomes something that's like, it's a bit of a flex for you to tell your friends, oh, we love a drink this way. Have you tried it with this? And I think people like that ability to bring something new to their friends group. And that's a positive thing that the bartenders have always done it, and now consumers are kind of doing it as well.
Yeah, and that's part of the experience of going out as well, isn't it? That whole market of people are actually going out to experience. And anyone that knows me will know that I talk about this all the time, that, in the industry, we're not selling food and drink. We are, there's so much more, and actually it is those experiences we're selling. But that is the consumer themselves that are becoming aware of that as well, that they're coming out for an experience. And in the cases of spirits, it is to, try something new or to have the good quality.
I think there's a challenge, right? I think that the consumers think, and I'm talking at a real broad strokes, I think people have always known that you could buy a chef's cookbook, or you could watch someone make some food on TV, and you can kind of replicate that recipe at home, but there's an inherent knowledge that you can't do it as well as the restaurant would do it. And that's not really existed the same with drinks. And I think people have kind of got a bit of a separation between the hospitality experience in a bar and the drink. And the drink is only one component of what goes into all of the experience. And we did something this year with a venue called Satan's Whiskers, which if people haven't come across it, I employ to check out as a venue. They're probably like up there with like the bartender's favorite bar in London. They're just great. And we did a couple of seminars with them. And one of the things they did was a thought experiment around a Mai Tai cocktail. And they got everyone in the rooms, 50 people, bartenders, hospitality people, to close their eyes. And they led them down this 5-minute story about, okay, horrific day at work. And you come into my bar and the music starts to envelop you. And you see this seat at the bar and you come there and I welcome you and I ask what you want and guide you with many blah, blah, blah. And you get to the point where, and I've made you this incredible looking Mai Tai, and you lift it to your mouth, you smell the mint and you taste the flavor. And it's awesome. You can see everyone's got a big smile on their face.
Yeah. I'm doing it now.
And then they transition to kind of go, right, now picture the scene. You walk into a room that is white floors, white ceilings, and there's a cold steel chair in the middle of the room and it's dead silent. And you sit on that chair and someone hands you the same drink. And they're like, what percentage of the price of that drink is represented by the liquid in the glass? And everyone in the room just like, is it just a big penny drop? And you're like, I know this to be true. But when someone really leads me through that, it just becomes such a more impactful message. And it's kind of, how do we help people to see more like what goes into creating the overall hospitality experience as beyond just, I've designed some really tasty cocktails.
Yeah, fantastic. And you were talking about the difference between UK hospitality and the experience abroad. I mean, what are those main differences? I mean, in terms of, I think
it's really varied. So we're an Italian company. You go to a lot of venues in Italy, and there's a real warmth to the hospitality experience. And you can kind of see that there's a few venues in London that I always kind of refer back to, like the Connaught is a really good example. So the Connaught Hotels, 5-star hotel, you kind of expect it to be this really kind of, I don't know, reserved, precise experience. But you go there and it is just so welcoming, so hospitable, lively, energetic, and just super welcoming. The two, so Giorgio and Ago, the head mixologist and kind of lead the set there, they just create this aura. And I think that comes from such a place of understanding what hospitality is. It's something we're desperately trying to kind of tap into and understand on a level that we can then start to share a bit far and wide.
Yeah, because it's interesting, because obviously you get individual venues that can create that, and people within those venues that create it. And I know we were talking before we started just the sort of the difference between London and then potentially the rest of the country. And actually, you know, although there are pockets of this, and for those of us in hospitality, we understand this, but how does that translate outside of London and those few individuals, or does it? I mean, is it just that, you know, that the British are so, you know, the old boozer that they take for granted, that, you know, I don't know. I mean,
No,
what do you
I
think?
don't mean. I think when I was kind of coming through and it's sort of in bars in Leicester, there was always a couple of points during the year where we'd come to London and you kind of get dazzled by like what some amazing bars are doing, and then the social media starts to kind of expose a lot of that. You'd be just scrolling through some of these bars. I remember it was bars like Nightjar. I remember seeing them, and then how they present cocktails was just this mind-blowing, like really elaborate garnishes, and their cocktail menu was a deck of cards that had individual cocktails on it, all these things that you'd never think of. So it was kind of like you go to London, you absorb all this inspiration, then come back and you start to implement certain things into your menu. Now you can get an absolutely incredible drinks, cocktails in any city in the UK. There is half a dozen bars, you know, because the speed at which the information can travel and the inspiration can travel is just instantaneous. And it's not so much now like you have to up sticks from where you're in to move to a London or a Manchester and Edinburgh to further your career. But it's definitely like, I think each city now, probably really pejorative, but I think each city now is almost like a distilled version of what London is. So you can find like the high street bars, the part of the chains doing what they're doing, and they're expanding their cocktail range way more than it was like 10 years ago. But then you'll also find really good independent venues with super talented, passionate people in it who don't need to go to a big city to exist like that.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing that I do find is that there's cities that are not sort of a couple of million people plus, they do tend to go in a bit of a cycle where you'll have a really strong, vibrant bar community of bartenders where they're bringing people to do masterclass and then that seems to drop off a little bit. And then it takes a bar to kind of pull that community back together and start things off again. And everything seems to be a bit more cyclical, whereas your big cities, it remains at a constant.
Yeah. But I mean, again, I said that, and as I'm thinking about it, I guess what I was getting at, that if you're in a city, how do you find these bars? But I think that's a problem even in London, because I mean, so you can reel them off, but that's your job. But I mean, I was just
for sure, yeah.
I was just thinking, even when I go down to London, and I do know where it's, you know, some really cool places are, but if you sort of find yourself in an area and you go, okay, let's go out, and you go, where am I going? Where is those? And I mean, I do know some absolutely beautiful, tiny little backstreet places that are just outstanding. But I guess that's the same as any city, isn't it? If you're in the know, you know where to find them. And if you're a tourist, it can be quite tricky to find the right place.
I always say this with Leicester, because like the amount of people who I work with have never been kind of north of the M25.
Yeah.
So when they kind of go, I've been to Leicester once and I had a terrible night out, I'm like, that's because you didn't know where to go. That it's, I think in any city, if you know where to go, like I'm always a champion of what's going on in sort of like your Leicester, Nottingham. It's kind of, and they're not small cities, but I think people just, where they get their information, their recommendations from, is probably driven by kind of paid advertising to push people into different ways. But yeah, there's definitely some good guides out there, and I think it's think I would always say, like, if you can find one really good bar at the start of the night and then ask the bartender where they would go, that's going to give you the best steer, because that's how things always used to be done, and it's still the best source of information.
I was going to say that, back in the day when I first started, and there was no social media, all of your marketing, if you're a small bar, all of your marketing was around word of mouth, and so it was about and so you always you were good, you would stand out good, and people came, and also that's how people found you, your customers talking about you. And although obviously we're all bombarded with social media these days, I think what I think, well, sort of as you're talking, sort of coming to that same conclusion, perhaps it is still just the same. To find those exceptional places, it is still just asking people, where is it the best place to go?
I think that kind of the best people to advise on where to go are the people who have experienced it. And I think by asking people who are embedded in the city's culture of bars and nightlife, that it's going to help you cut through the noise of maybe messages or advertising that's been put in front of you, not because of its merit, but because of the budget behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, John, I just wanted to ask you, because I ask everybody when they come on the podcast about what has been your biggest mistake or your darkest day, even, because I think that's where a lot of learning takes place. So, I mean, what about for you? Where have been your misstep?
I thought about this a lot, trying to kind of put it down to one thing. And I think there's I guess, like, times when we had a nightclub and a venue, it's more about like what would we have done differently, like knowing what we know now. And the kind of power of hindsight is obviously unrealistic, and you can't help but to kind of think back on things. But there's definitely things that we kind of thought about doing but didn't for whatever reason, or I don't know. It's just we're all really young at that point. But again, like the brand is still going. It's still a club night that goes on, and I think that I was trying to kind of zoom back to kind of the one thing that I do think about that I wish I'd done differently is there was a point where I moved to move out of the industry and go into work into this kind of car related industry for a little bit. And when I kind of knew that's what I was going to do, and I'd done a job interview, I got asked, and I went to interview at Bain's restaurant in Nottingham for a bar manager's role. I had an interview, and this was, I think they probably just got their first star or were just about to. And it was just this opportunity to kind of work there and develop the drinks program. And that's the thing I keep kicking myself. Like every now and again, I'll have a little, like a dream or a flicker of like, if only, because that would have been, I am immensely happy with the route to get me to where I am now. But I think that would have been such an exciting time. And again, what they do is so distinctive and so groundbreaking. God, the crazy things that we could have done with drinks at that point, I think would have been amazing. That's the thing. That's probably the one thing.
But the timing of that would have been, I'm sorry, I'm going to make it worse. I was going to say, but the timing of that would have been perfect as well, just in terms of sort of the wider, because looking back to where Sat Bain was and sort of the history of that, but also spirits and cocktails and sorry, I'm making it worse. Yeah.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, brilliant. Thank you. But how can people get hold of you? How can people get in touch, contact you?
Yeah, so Instagram, probably just at Jono Mayes, all one word. DMs are always open. We've talked to a lot of bartenders up and down the country about to come to some of our things. But yeah, Campari Academy. So on our Instagrams, Campari Academy UK, the website as a repository of all the different things that we're doing. And I think we try and develop content that's not just for people who are in hospitality, but people who are interested in it, people who've got a love of drinks or food. And hopefully there's a lot of content on there that's going to give people an insight into what the best bars in the world are doing and the best people in the industry are pushing forward. So yeah, that's the shameless plug of where to get in contact.
No, absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. And I will be going straight there right now and just looking at the lovely pictures of cocktails. Thank you so much, Jono. It's been so great to catch up with you, and hope we speak again soon.
Pleasure. Thank you, Cassie.